time we had these 5 proofs of the existence of the soul. We talked about, remember, common sense, and which isn't very common, actually. It's very uncommon. But just how we all refer to when someone passes away, they've passed on, they've left, they've gone away, they're no longer with us, all these terminologies which naturally describe that something has moved on. Then we discussed about the intuitive understanding, how we naturally identify the body as belonging to me, but then we don't really often think about who is the me that the body belongs to. But that's an intuitive understanding that this body it belongs to me, but who am I? That's the big question. And then, of course, the presence of consciousness, which is a natural symptom of the soul, and how we can see the soul and understand the presence of the soul by the existence of consciousness, which ceases to be once the soul departs from the body and the body is left not living, so like that. Then we talked about the NDEs, near-death experiences, that are there, and I think I may have shared one story of the lady who left her body and was in the hospital, and when she came back, she basically was clinically dead. You know, she flatlined, and the doctors were fighting to try to save her, and they brought her back. And when they brought her back, she said, I was outside of my body, and I was somewhere outside of this hospital, and I was floating on the ledge outside of a kind of terrace or something, and there was a shoe there, and then she described this shoe, and they just thought, you know, she was dreaming or making it up, and then, but it was such a vivid experience for her that she kept describing this shoe and this place, and she was saying, is there a place? And she was saying it was on this side of the hospital. And then so they started to look into it, and they found that there was actually a terrace that was there, but it had been locked for years. No one had ever gone out onto it. But because they were so intrigued by her memory, they had the custodian unlock it, and they went out onto that terrace. And on that terrace, they found the exact shoe that she described. And it perfectly matched the way it was laying, the markings on it, scuff marks and different things like that. And it was just one shoe randomly lying on this veranda. And so evidently the way that it occurred, the only way you could have possibly seen that shoe and described it was to have had a sort of aerial view of it. So it's kind of a documented case. But this is not, it's not a rarity, actually. I forget what the numbers are again. I think it's like 1 in 10 or 1 in 100 people have had like a near-death experience and had some experience like this. And then, of course, we talked about past lives and reincarnation. And I think everyone was really inspired by this idea of reincarnation, if I recall correctly, and we all wanted to kind of discuss this a little more. So I thought we would have just some more conversation around this, maybe a bit of questions and answers, and I've got a few resources to share. Also, our London College of Vedic Studies. I don't know if any of you use the Udemy platform, but on Udemy we have a whole course that one of our senior most monks, he's been a monk for almost 35 years now, and he's kind of like our like leader of the monks, you can say, I guess. But he did a whole course on there that you could tune in and check out if you wanted to, and I can share the link or information about it with you later. But just as a short one, because we don't have so much time, I think that's probably about a 3 or 4 hour course. He really gets into it. But there are basic ideas, and I'll be jumping around with my screen sharing. But maybe you read this verse last week. This is text 220 from the Gita. Jayate mriyate vakara chen nayam bhutva bhavita vanabhuyaha. Ajo nitya shashvato yam parano nahanyate hanyamane sharire. For the soul there is neither birth nor death at any time. He has not come into being, does not come into being, and will not come into being. He is unborn, eternal, ever existing, and primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain. So, of course, there's a whole section of the second chapter of the Gita which discusses specifically around this idea of the science of the soul, the existence of the soul, the presence of the soul, and for our conversation and purposes, specifically around this idea of reincarnation. There's a book that I have here with me, which is, oh, it's hard to see when you have one of these backgrounds. I don't know, can you see that a little bit now? Yeah. So it's called The Reincarnation Controversy, and it's by an author named Stephen Rosen. And he explains here in the book a very nice explanation of the word reincarnation and the kind of, what is it, etymology of the word. That the word reincarnation is from the English language. It's in the middle of the 19th century, this word started to appear, and it's composed of 5 Latin elements. So those of you who are into linguistics or like to know the origin of words. So it starts with, the first word is, you can see here, re, R-E, which of course means again. In, which we know means into or to go in. Karn, let me go back. C-A-R-N, carn, which has to come from the term carnivorous. Right, exactly. Thank you, Marcella. Very nice. Yeah, the flesh has to do with the flesh. And then A-T-E, it says A-T-E. So A-T-E is the cause or becoming. And then I-O-N, which is a process. So anything that ends in I-O-N usually means it's kind of a process of something. So literally translated, this means the process of coming into flesh again. So reincarnation is the process of coming into flesh again. And he notes here that there's a word that is actually older than reincarnation from the English, from the 16th century, which is the word transmigration, which is almost a synonymous term for this principle of reincarnation. And this, again, trans means across, migre, M-I-G-R, means to go or to move, and ation, again, is a process of causing or becoming. So again, the literal translation is the process of moving across from one to another, transmigration. So this principle of reincarnation is covered very much in the Bhagavad-gita. And I'll discuss a little bit more from this book in a moment, because the main thing that Stephen Rosen covers in this book is he looks at how in all the world, the major religions of the world, reincarnation is more or less accepted, which means that reincarnation is not a kind of sectarian idea, or it's not just a Hindu idea, it's not just a Buddhist idea or some Eastern philosophy, but it's actually a functioning science of understanding the way that the soul operates and the way that the world operates around us. He gets into a lot of things in the book about how many times this kind of, it has been eliminated from scripture over time, or just it's thought of as just as a hereafter, a life after death kind of thing. But especially in the Bhagavad-gita, there's another verse, again, that you might have read last week, which we often use, and that explains and describes the principle of the transmigration of the soul. Dehino shmenyata dehe komadam yovanam jara tata dahantara praptir dhiras tatra namuyati. And this verse is 213 of the Bhagavad Gita, and it explains that as the soul continuously passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, similarly the soul passes into another body at death. And a sober person, or one who is knowledgeable or intelligent, and then he understands this and is not bewildered by such a change. So this is an interesting concept or principle that helps us to understand it. You can see this picture of how there is something that is consistent throughout the change of these bodies. So even in this life, I think all those of you who are scientists, they say that the body has completely redeveloped and reconstituted itself after, I think it's 7 years. So all the cells within the body, none of them are the same as the cells that were there 7 years ago. So that means the body has actually completely changed on a physical or scientific level, a molecular level. So the body is not the same, but still there is something that remains the same. And of course, that's explained in the Bhagavad Gita as the soul, or the Atma, or the Jiva, so like that. So yeah, as far as other, I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. So as far as there are other things here, maybe I can do it with this. So okay. Sorry. Okay, so there are other resources. I wanted to just show a video. I guess everyone likes to watch videos, yeah? So we can be entertained. A longer portion of this video is shown in that course that I mentioned that's there on the Udemy platform. So let me just see where it comes up. There we go. Let's see.
Midnight, Monday, May 1st, 2000. The screams came out of nowhere. One day, James Leininger, just 3 weeks past his...
Can you see and hear that? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Birthday was a happy, playful toddler, the centerpiece of a loving family of 3 living on the soft coastal plain of southern Louisiana. And then suddenly, in the darkest hour of midnight, he was flopping around in his bed like a broken power line, howling at the sky as if he could crack open the heavens with his ear-shattering distress.
These are samples of the recurring drawings that James did every day for a year and a half or 2 years. It was just like the nightmares. It just goes on and on.
I was always looking for a logical explanation for James's nightmares and his knowledge of aviation. And many people have asked us, do we have an aviation or military background? And we don't. And that's what made James's recollections so much more uncanny, that he had this basic knowledge of military and aviation where there was no way he could be getting this information.
James in his nightmares described crashing into water. And in the research that we did for the story, these are the aircraft action reports from DC-81, about 400 pages of action report.
After my husband and I did extensive research based on what James had told us, we were able to determine that James was remembering the life of a fighter pilot who'd been killed during World War II at the Battle for Iwo Jima. His name was James M. Houston Jr. And when his family sent us the initial package of photographs, we were amazed by the striking resemblance between James M. Houston Jr., the fighter pilot who was shot down in World War II, and our own son, James.
I was not just skeptical, I was adamant that this was not happening in my house. And my belief system rebelled against the concept and the idea of reincarnation and past lives.
It was important for me to write this book with my husband. Number one, to tell James's story. I actually think that what James experienced is not an uncommon phenomenon. I think probably a lot of children remember past lives when they're in the 2 to 5 year old age bracket.
What we did was we listened and we followed the things that our son gave us. It became an adventure. It became an adventure of discovery that went thousands of miles, talking to hundreds of people and establishing facts beyond any reasonable doubt of proof that this is not a coincidence. This is indeed the past life experience of a child remembering the spirit and having the spirit of another person join this reality.
So there's a longer video that interviews the boy and takes it through the whole story, but there were some pictures there of the boy with an old man, and that was actually his former person who was another pilot that was there when he was shot down off the coast of Japan, I think it was. So anyway, it's a whole interesting story, but there's a doctor I think I mentioned once before, who his name is Dr. Ian Stevenson, and he, let me just see if I can find, yeah, this is a book that he has. I have it in digital format, but it's called Children Who Remember Their Previous Lives. And you can see from that previous video that I showed, that family, they're obviously not a Hindu family. They're not even Hare Krishnas, you know. They're actually like Christians from Louisiana, you know, and I'm from America, so Louisiana Christians, that means they're really pretty serious Christians. And so they're not ready to accept anything that isn't clearly from the Bible, if you know what I'm talking about. So, you know, like that, they really weren't. So as he said, you know, this isn't happening in my house, you know. So like that. So they weren't believers, but as at the end, you could see that they said it's just unrefutable evidence was produced that he could so clearly remember. And this doctor here, Ian Stevenson, he is a doctor of psychiatry, and he started to have experiences initially in the West, in America. He's from, I think it's a University of Virginia. And he was having experiences, especially with children between the ages of sort of 3 and 5, who were having memories and saying things that their parents couldn't quite understand. And somehow when he would talk with the children and spend time with them, he would see that there was a lot of continuity to things that they were remembering. And he was very intrigued. So he started to do a lot of research. And I think there's something like in this book is the kind of a collection of the best of about 2,000 cases that he investigated. And he wound up starting his own institute that is, I think, still there running in Virginia. He's now passed away, but one of his chief students has taken over the project. And they basically, I mean, there's some really amazing stories in here you read and you think, you know, that's like so far out about how people could remember this. And, you know, but we know that a lot of times if kids talk about their imaginary friend, or they talk about something that, Mommy, I was a fighter pilot in my last life. And you're like, that's nice, Johnny. Yeah, that's good. It's like, yeah, sure. Mommy, I was shot in my last life, or I did this, or I did that. Yeah, or whatever. I remember this. I remember that. There was also another video of, I won't show it now, but from the, what's her name? Oprah Winfrey, from the Oprah Winfrey show, where she had a young boy on there who clearly remembered a life as being shot in the Civil War, and things he described and the pictures that he drew as a child, later, like Civil War buffs, people who were really following the Civil War, they looked at these pictures and then they transposed over top of it pictures of an exact place where one of the biggest battles, it's a place called Antietam, and like where this big battle had happened, and how he was describing so many things that were there. And he was like a 5-6-year-old boy. So like that, there seem to be so many different kind of evidences, not just from the secular world, or sorry, not just from like Hinduism or from Krishna consciousness, or from the Gita, but actually in the world around us, that scientifically people are recognizing that these kind of things are genuine and need to be considered, bona fide, or actual true happenings, and not just discarded as some nonsense. So like that, these are a few things. So I just thought, there's lots more that can be shared, but I'm just wondering if anyone has any past life experiences, or if they have any thoughts or any questions or anything they'd like to discuss. We could have a little bit of an open dialogue session. Let's see in the
I have a question.
Yes, Marcella.
Also, I just want to mention that I signed Discovery Plus, and I have a show, I think it's called The Ghost Inside My Children, something like that. And it's about all different stories about children with past life experience. Nice. And there's some really interesting ones. One was a kid, he's saying he had to go to Hollywood, and his name was this, his age was that, he was born on that day. And then they find out he was the writer of the film Gone with the Wind. He used to be. Reincarnation. It was really interesting. And one was in the Titanic. And so I start watching it, and there are many episodes, and it's really overwhelming, like how much these children remember and how the process is. And I also have a question.
Where did you say that was, Marcella?
It's on Discovery Plus. I think you have to sign it, like Netflix or Disney Plus or. Yeah. But yeah, it's really interesting.
Okay, nice.
And I have a question, because I remember reading a book back home about, like this one you show, about children telling their past lives. And I saw that some stories, they were born with birthmarks or missing a limb or something like that, that they find out it was due to how they die or something that happened. So I was wondering, why does that happen to certain people, but doesn't seem to happen to everyone, I guess. But who I don't know, like, is there a reason why some people are born with these kind of birthmarks and others don't, or it depends on the situation?
Well, what Ian Stevenson explains in his book is that, just trying to see, I saw it. Maybe it was in the other book, in this one, but they describe that usually the connection with birthmarks and things like that, it often has to do with yeah, I'm probably not going to find it so quickly. It often has to do with if the person died due to some kind of severe traumatic experience. So like one of the cases in Ian Stevenson's book, it's about a child who has a birthmark, I think somewhere around here, and then one at the back of his head, you know, and he was describing his own, you know, that he was shot, that some, you know, as a child, he kept saying he would have nightmares and he would explain, I was shot. And then as they started to trust and believe him, he would open up more and tell more facts. And then when they researched it, they found out that actually he was shot at point blank range in the head, and the place where the bullet went in and bullet left his head are the exact spots for those birthmarks. And or who are born with birth defects in their hands or legs, and it's because of in some way their previous body had been deformed because of the traumatic way that they died, they or were killed. So it doesn't happen to everyone, because not everything does necessarily happen to everyone. But it does happen to some people, and in that way we can see signs of this throughout. And often when these things are traced back, it really is undeniably clear that this is a clear connection. And the Gita explains, actually, one of the, you know, the Gita explains that we carry these impressions from our previous lives into our next life. Actually, let me see if I can find that. Yeah. Yeah, so this is from one of the Upanishads, which is from the Vedic text. It says, at the time of death, the area of the soul, the heart, becomes lit, and by that light, the soul departs either through the eye, the head, or through other apertures of the body. And when he departs, the pranas, the various life airs, follow him to his next destination. His knowledge and his deeds follow with him, as does his previous wisdom, if not specific details of his former life. Just as a caterpillar, when it reaches the end of one blade of grass, and after having properly approached another one, draws itself together toward the new blade, so the soul, after having thrown away the prior body and its ignorance, draws itself together and latches onto the new body. And as the goldsmith, taking a piece of gold, turns it into another, more beautiful shape, even so does this soul, after having thrown away the old and useless body, make unto himself newer and hopefully better bodies according to his previous actions, abilities, and desires. So it's described that the subtle body is carried from the old body into a new body. And we can see also examples of that. We see it around us all the time. We just kind of intuitively accept it. You know, we look at small children, and, you know, you can have, even if you say twins or triplets, you know, they're born on the same day, they look the same, you think they should be identical, but they all have natural characteristics that are distinct and individual. And they may have natural abilities for art or natural abilities for, like, I often give the example that my brother, who is younger than me by about 2.5, almost 3 years, as we were growing up, I was always collecting books and he was always busy with a screwdriver taking things apart, you know? It's like, where did that come from? Why was one of us like that? It wasn't any external kind of influence. It wasn't like my mother or father was teaching me to read and trying to teach him to take things apart. It's like something came with us. And we all have certain things that come in. For some people, it's much more pronounced. If you use the example of someone like Mozart, who at the age of 5 was able to write a concerto on the piano, it's like, where did that come from? Obviously, people bring things in from previous lives. Some people are just naturally musically adept. Some people are artistic. Some people learn very quickly language, or even learn to speak other languages. You know, so many different things, skills and abilities that people may have, that these things are carried over from a previous life. But not everything kind of filters through, because you have to remember, for a long time, that consciousness is trapped inside of a body that it can't really express itself, you know. So, and it's different also if you put, it's sort of like if, you know, it doesn't sound very nice, but if we kind of gag you and tie your hands up and put a hood over your head and stick you in a room that's only, you know, 2 by 2, your expression is going to be different than if you're like unbound and ungagged and like able to kind of communicate. So to the extent that the body, the physical body that we're put in, it limits us, then also we start to have a whole bunch of other experiences. And even in this life, we see how easily we forget things. So, you know, it's probably hard to remember what you were doing, you know, last week. Maybe not at this time last week, because you kind of remember. But if I were to say, what were you doing at exactly 11 minutes past 7 last week on Friday night, you probably can't remember. Vishalpuru, which verse did you speak at 11 minutes past 7 yet last week?
We can check the recording.
Well, very good. That's perfect. But probably nobody remembers. That's the point. You know, it's hard enough to remember all the things you're learning in school, right, in university right now. You know, and 2 years you won't remember half of it. You know, it won't stick with you. So the mind is like a sieve that sieves out some things, but some things that are very powerful and deep impressions, they stick within the mind. So the mind or the body is also formed around the consciousness. So it's explained that depending on the consciousness that we have in our previous life, then we start to formulate that body in a next life. I remember some years ago, anyone likes people watching? Yeah, okay. So we were out in a town. We were actually distributing Bhagavad-gitas on the street in Kingston, as it happens. And we were sitting in one kind of little park area, just watching people. And there was one man, and you could see he was so attached to his dog. And we were watching how attached, and then we started looking, and you could see, you know, the dog was kind of old and he was kind of probably middle-aged. And but you could see that he was starting to look like that dog. And we were just thinking, my God, you know, sometimes it's like, whoa, you know, you really think that there's such a likeness, you know. And we were thinking, you know, this guy is definitely going to wind up being a dog in his next life. He's so attached to that dog, and he's starting to even look like the dog. And so, you know, like this, our consciousness starts to build. Or if, let's say, you know, ladies on the call, you know, it's possible in your last life you were men who were very attached to beautiful women. So your thoughts were like, you know, very, very attached to ladies. So now look at you, you've become a lady, a beautiful lady in this life, you know. So, and if you become attached to a handsome man or an ugly man or whatever kind of man, then, you know, you may wind up being like that in your next life. So whatever is our consciousness at the time of death, the Bhagavad-gita explains that the soul carries that and starts to prepare that next body to house that soul according to the consciousness. So in that way, there's an understanding that there is a level of free will that exists with us able to determine the direction that we go. And to the extent that our consciousness is freed from the binding mentalities that attach us to different objects or things or people or places in this material world, to that extent we free our consciousness to move on from this material world or the cycle of reincarnation, so that we can be liberated or freed from having to take another birth again, because taking birth and going through the process of living and then ultimately dying, as much as it's celebrated, it's also quite a painful journey. And if you can imagine, anyone ever saw that movie Groundhog Day? You know, if you have to live the same thing again and again and again and again. So, you know, it can be quite a traumatic thing. So the idea is that we ultimately want to kind of escape this cycle of repeated birth and death.
So we can choose, right?
We can choose, yeah, but we have to make the choice. Sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah. So if we can choose if you want to come back or not.
To some extent, yes. I mean, for most people, the choice is already made just because they're so habituated to act in a certain way that they're not actually freed from the bindings that kind of the ropes that pull us and hold us here. So lots of times people think that they're free, but everything that they do is a habit, some sort of habit that's been created, and they live inside of a habituated lifestyle, which means that they're not really freed from things. But we can choose. But that means we have to really focus our consciousness with intelligence, means with knowledge, and we have to act in that knowledge and in that intelligence in order to kind of free ourselves or align ourselves with a kind of trajectory that means at the time of death, I'm not going to be like thinking about my handsome husband or thinking about my children or thinking about my dog or my goldfish or whatever it is. It's like, you know, yes, I'm ready to go. Oh, little fishy, I love you so much. And then the next thing you know, like, how did it happen? You know, and then you're looking out the fishbowl and someone's looking at you going, oh, nice little fishy. And you think, no, I wasn't meant to be a fish. What's going on here? So, yeah, like that, we can choose, but it's also described that at the time of life, or at the time of death, rather, you hear many people, they say, it was as if my entire life flashed before my eyes, right? We've all heard something that people describe like that. So sometimes they say it's a little bit like a roulette wheel. Where's your consciousness going to land? You know, the wheel's spinning, tick, 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 and the ball's bouncing. Where's your consciousness going to land, you know? And is it going to land on, yeah, like some desires that I have that are left unfulfilled? Oh, I didn't finish my master's degree. Oh, no, you know, lying on your deathbed, worried about your master's degree. No problem. Then the material energy will make an arrangement for you to come back and finish your master's degree, get your PhD. You know, you can come back and start all over again. You know, if you think one more year to go is too long, just think about having to go another 20 some years, start over. So where is our consciousness? And that means that our consciousness needs to be able to focus on that which is transcendental, or beyond the mundane, beyond the temporal world, and focused on that which is situated in eternality, which means we need to be focused on the platform of the soul, who is the owner of the body, and not focused on the body itself, like that, which is a lot easier said than done. Sorry, I rambled on again. This happens all the time. I'll try to. Anyone else? Any other questions? Ellie, yeah, I was going to say, you always have some nice interjection, please.
So I was thinking about, I mean, but recently, me and my parents have been talking about this thing a lot. I mean, they're not spiritual at all, but they always ask me whatever we discuss on here, and then I talk about it for ages with them. And we're talking about reincarnation and thinking about what we would have been in a past life, if we would have been a person or an animal. And I was wondering, aside from the kind of characteristics that we have now and our natures now, will we ever actually know for sure without like the memories of, you know, like these children? Will we ever know what we were? Because I can't work out what animal I would have been, because I feel like I don't have I can't think of it or like have any recollection of anything. But I really do, like, reincarnation makes so much sense to me, and I just really want to know what I was and what I'm going to be. I just find it so fascinating.
It is fascinating. There are some people who do kind of past life regressions, and you know, we could dive into that. One may question how profound or true that may be or not be. We do have one of our devotees. I don't know if you've ever done a program with him. He used to do some of the KCSOC programs. Jaidev Prabhu, you know him, Vrishni? So he does some past life regressions, and he's gone to different universities and done them, and had some success, and some people felt like, wow, that's right. And then of course some people say, oh, that's a big hoax, how can you know? I guess the main thing is that it's unlikely that we will remember, and the reason, there are many reasons for that, but amongst children, it's usually between the ages of 3 and 5. By the time they start to get 6, 7, 8, they've already had so much information and data starting to be piled into this life that whatever was there before sort of gets, it's like written over, you know. There may sometimes be, you know, like if you ever have deja vu, you know, sometimes they use deja vu as a proof of reincarnation, that we have those moments that's like, no, I definitely remember this. Or you meet someone, you know, I have a very good friend, actually it's the friend of mine who introduced me to Krishna consciousness. And we met in America, but he was originally from America, but he had been living in the UK and in London for many years. And then he moved back just to America, just to go to high school in America. And the first time that we met, immediately we both just kind of looked at each other like, do I know you? And do you know me? And it was just like, immediately there was this kinship. And it's quite interesting because his mother was very much into spirituality, not religion. Of course, you know, where I grew up in America was kind of in the Bible Belt. So it was very, very, very strict kind of Christian orientation. But, you know, she was really into different things like karma, reincarnation, healing with, you know, crystals, and channeling other entities, and, you know, other realms, and so many different things. And I went to their house and I saw their bookshelf, and I remember I just like went, oh my God, I've been waiting to come here my whole life. And I just sat down on the sofa and started looking through all these books, and it was just like I had come home, and it was all meant to be, you know. So we meet people sometimes. They say this sometimes also about partners, life partners. You know, people search their whole lives to, you know, find that soulmate, you know, that person that was, you know. And sometimes we have that experience. We meet someone and we think, oh yeah. So, you know, that we may be walking over the, you know, previously treaded territory and lands, and meeting with people that we know from previous lives, and we get a sense of it, but we never really know 100% for sure. But the Bhagavad-gita that we read from Srila Prabhupada, he often would say, when asked with this kind of question, or posed with this kind of question, he would say that, well, it's kind of like if you're in a house that's on fire, you don't usually wander around trying to figure out who started the fire, where it all began, you know. He said the most important thing is to get the heck out of the house, you know. So we're in a house, it's on fire. We know we've been here before. We know we're probably going to wind up being here again unless we start focusing on getting out. So really the most important thing is not trying to find out if you were Marilyn Monroe in your previous life, or if you were like, whoever, but trying to figure out, who do I want to be in my next life? That's the important thing. Let me make sure that I get that clarified. Otherwise, we can become obsessed again with a certain persona in this material world that just, again, confines us to the material world. So, and as far as animals, I mean, it is correct. We can come from an animal species into the human form. I know when I was growing up, and like I said, I was naturally attracted to a lot of this when I was much younger. And a lot of the teachings that I was reading then would say that reincarnation only goes one direction, means you only progress, you can't regress, that you can't go back into an animal species. But the Bhagavad-gita, which really is the authoritative shastra or source book, textbook on the principles of reincarnation, explains that you can go back, you can regress. And I think in some of the books, if you have it, there's a whole section of 4 pictures that shows that if you don't take advantage of the human form of life, which gives us the opportunity to discriminate and contemplate genuinely this science of the soul, and if we misuse this human form of life by acting like an animal, then the material energy, which is one of the topics of the Gita that we discussed initially, you may remember, Prakriti, or material nature, the material energy will make sure that you get that body. So it's almost like fulfills your wishes and desires, So again, like if we think about our dog all the time, or our goldfish, or our cat, and then we could wind up coming back like that. Or I think in the pictures it shows, like if we like to eat ravenously, or like to eat raw, if you go to the restaurant and you order your steak rare, it's like, I just want to see the blood dripping out of that steak, then you can come back in your next life as a tiger or a lion or something, and you can eat lots of raw blood. Or if you just like to pig out all the time, then you can wind up being a nice little pig in your next life, no problem. And so this kind of mentality is also there. But really what we want to do is elevate ourselves to kind of move out of the material world. A lot of the Vedic texts also talk a lot about the cultivation of consciousness to higher planets, because our planet here, Earth, is considered one of the middle planetary systems. Another thing that the Vedic teachings explain very clearly is the whole cosmology, that it's not just planet Earth where there's life everywhere. And whether we can see it or whether we have the eyes to see it and understand it, what was it? I just saw something in the news, like on one of the space stations, they just discovered some new life forms in space, and they're supposedly on Mars at the moment, exploring Mars, and so there's life everywhere. So the thing is, by the progression of advanced consciousness, then we move ourselves, even in this life, we move ourselves into different spheres of association. And that's why, most people go to university to cultivate knowledge. So if you get a good education, you can get a good job, and you can make money, and you can, be in a more successful bracket and sphere of life. Whereas if you're born in a, poverty-stricken place with no education, then, you live in a different kind of sphere of life. So the whole idea is with the cultivation of higher consciousness, we elevate ourselves. And this is the point of the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad-gita. It talks about the principle of Gyan, Jnana, Gyan, which means transcendental knowledge. And by the cultivation of transcendental knowledge, we begin to elevate ourselves by elevating our consciousness, and we elevate ourselves as a spiritual being with the goal ultimately to be not to take birth again, not to reincarnate. But unfortunately, I know when I was a kid, we used to sit and talk about, oh, if I could come back, what would I come back as, you know? And, you know, some people would be like, I want to come back as a cat, you know, because cats just lay around, just hang out. And I was like, oh, I want to be a dolphin, you know, and different people want to be different things. So if you want to do that, no problem. You've probably been one before, you can be it again if you like. But really, an intelligent person doesn't really want to do that again. I would prefer to move on to the next thing. Anyone else? Any other thoughts? Vishal, any powerful reflections?
I don't know if I should. When you were reading the thought about from the Upanishad about the soul leaving from the body, right? There's this one moment that came into my head, and it was so my uncle passed away in a hospice, and I remember we were all in the room, and he couldn't open his mouth because he had cancer. And the minute after he passed away, his mouth opened. So when you said that the soul leaves the body, that image of just the mouth opening at the end and then the nurse confirming that he died,
yeah,
is something that I remember when they stuff like that.
Yeah, that's very profound memory, and not many people, at least probably your age, all of your ages, young. When you're young, you don't really get much experience of being in the room when someone leaves, when someone actually dies. It's a very, very powerful thing. And for sure, there is clearly that moment where it's like they're there, and then that body is now, it's a dead body. It's not, you know, and this happened a couple of years ago. I was with my auntie when she passed away, and there was about 6 or 7 of us who were around the bed, and, you know, we were crying and holding her hand, and they were singing, and, you know, and she was there, and we were all like that. But then there was that moment where, and often it's breathing. You can see it through the breathing there. And then they'll take that one last breath. And then often the mouth opens, and a lot of times that's how the soul leaves. It actually leaves through the kind of mouth sort of thing. So with that last breath, and then that's it, the body is not there anymore. So yeah, that's a powerful experience. And yeah, thank you for sharing. Nice reflection. Anyone else? Fernanda, we see you're in a black box. Thank you for joining us, coming late.
Hi, sorry, I was in a meeting with my group, not a fun one. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, we're having fun here, so nice to see your smile and your glowing. Whenever you come, it lights up the whole group, right?
Yeah, this is actually my reward after such a dreadful meeting, you know.
Well, just prepare your consciousness so you never have to come back here for dreadful meetings ever again.
No, exactly. That's what I'm thinking now. I'm thinking I don't want to, in my next life, you know, to go through this again, to wait more than 30 years to go through this again. So yeah, this is definitely something that I'll sort it out in this life.
Very good. And I see someone named Rashmi. Rashmi, are you there? Would you like to come in and join in? Any comments, reflections? Okay, no problem.
Jai, I checked the show. It's called The Ghost Inside My Child.
Yeah.
And it's on Amazon Prime, not Discovery Plus. I got confused. Sorry. It's too many subscriptions. And it seems to have some episodes on YouTube as well.
Okay, that's great. It's
Wow.
good.
It was really interesting, yeah.
You can go and check that out. Very nice.
I have one more question if nobody else has got any and we have time. Because you just got me thinking, you know, and you saying about deja vu can be like a sign of your past life and remembering things. I think we've discussed this before, but recently I've literally had a reoccurring dream like 4 times in the past like 10 days maybe. And it's just basically the same setting, just different things. And I was thinking about it, and I'm really into like researching dreams, and I was looking at it and it was saying you can only dream things that you've seen before because your mind then just recreates the image. But I'm in this house in the dream and I've never seen it in my life. There's no way that I've like seen that and then rethought of it, because I just don't know what it's like. Not even like this world. It seems like a really strange world. And I was wondering if maybe that could be something to do with either like a past life or a past dream, or where that's come from, because it just feels like when I'm in that dream, it literally doesn't even feel like a normal dream, and it's happened recently, and I was just wondering if that had anything to do with anything, or I'm actually just mental.
Well, I mean, the more that we open ourselves up to higher consciousness, then the more that things will come out, we'll experience synchronicities, and the subconscious or the superconscious consciousness, the super soul that we've talked about, will sometimes also try to relay things to us in dreams, and help us to have deeper insights and help us to progress. Remember that little piece of Krishna that's inside of all of us as the Paramatma. We're the little Atma, and then he's the Paramatma, the great Atma. Then he's there always trying to encourage and inspire us to make spiritual progress. It's just, unfortunately, we don't always listen within because we're too busy listening without, or listening to what's going on outside instead of really listening to what's going on inside. So it's possible. And if it's like a fantastic world, you know, it is quite possible in a previous life, maybe you were like a demi-goddess living on the heavenly planets and some far out, surrounded by riches, and you've just descended into this world to help all the rest of us make spiritual progress and advancement. So that's also explained in the Vedic text, that this age is actually, because this age is so degraded, you know, kind of like it, well, I guess even now in universities and schools, because of all of the craziness that's been going on with the pandemic, they're kind of lowering the standard of how they grade and test things. So, I mean, I know in America they call it grading on a scale. They call that here as well. You know, where sometimes if everybody in the class doesn't do so well, then they make the best grade the 100%. Like if, you know, the highest grade is a 75%, they'll make the 75 the 100, and then they grade everything on that scale. So in Kali Yuga, because things are so bad, it's actually in one sense easier in this age to make spiritual progress in one way, especially because this chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra that we do, this is considered to be the easy process for making spiritual advancement. And therefore it's described that because it's so easy, then these exalted beings from the higher planets, they actually they're queuing up. They've got like their ticket. They're queuing up to take birth in this age because the exit route is so easy in this age. So it's quite possible that all of you are actually demi-goddesses or demigods who've come here just simply to finish up your business and get out of here. You know, it's so apparent. I mean, just look at Marcella. She is like the flower goddess, you know. I mean, it's so obvious. But it's hard to know. But these things are there, and we do have recollections. Sometimes, one place Srila Prabhupada explains that if you might go to sleep, you know, if during the day you see a mountain and you also visit a place where there is some gold, in the nighttime you may dream of a golden mountain. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you were, you know, at a golden mountain. It just may be the way that your mind puts things together in the dream. So that's also there. But if we're really focusing on our dreams and focusing on our consciousness being developed, then for sure we can start to see and experience things in our dreams that can guide us and help us to understand a forward progressive stage. So, but don't go back to the heavenly planets, Ellie. Let's all go back to the spiritual world, and then there, the bodies that we get are eternal, full of bliss and full of knowledge. So you don't need a degree, you don't need a PhD, because you already have full intelligence. No need to go through all of this trouble. Anyway, just a thought.
I think that's the goal, right, Jai? Not to come back here. That's my goal. I don't want to come back to Earth. I don't like it here. Yeah. So yeah, okay. I'm gonna write.
That's kind of the goal. Yeah. The challenge will be, as we live through life, you know, to be able to, like Lord Jesus explained, that to be able to be in the world but not of the world. So to not become, because sometimes we can get into a consciousness, it's like, I hate this place, I don't like this place, I don't want, and then that's called aversion. So there's, you know, there's this idea, there's like one coin and it has two sides. One side is attachment and the other side is aversion. So it means that I'm either attached to being here or I hate it, you know, and it's like, we don't want to be in either one of those spaces. We just want to understand that this world is the way that it is. I am here. I'm in a bit of machinery here. This body is simply a machine. So let me utilize this body to the best of my ability with whatever gifts I've been blessed with. Let me engage those for a higher purpose. And let me finish up my business here in this life and try to help as many people as possible to also finish up their business here in this lifetime, like that. So, because we've got this body, so we can't really, you know, you can't, I don't want to be here anymore. So the obvious way to not be here anymore is, you know, just finish yourself.
No, I just don't want to come back.
Yeah, that's good. Make sure you
Say now.
off the business. So
Yeah, I get it.
yeah. Okay, anything else? Varsha, we haven't heard from you. Would you like to interject any deep, profound scientific realizations?
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you. Actually, I think you're right. You know, when we're thinking about the whole reincarnation thing, because scientifically, I guess a lot of people don't believe in that. I always hear colleagues talking about, you know, how they are so not into these things, and they don't really want to listen to these things. But when you think about it from a different perspective, and you think about, you know, how the world came into beings, it's actually, you just think that the Big Bang Theory that scientists so-called say that happened is actually not, it doesn't make sense. Yeah. Even working in science, to me, it just doesn't make sense. When I was learning physics, I remember in school learning about the Big Bang Theory, how the teacher was explaining something just came out of nothing. It just didn't really make sense to me. But yeah,
happening all the time, don't we? Something coming from.
Yeah, yeah.
It never happens, right? When was the last time that there was nothing and then all of a sudden something just showed up on the scene, you know? Yeah. Anyway, so I mean, we discussed that before. It's a big topic, but I mean, the irony is that if you think about it, like that picture that shows the transmigration of the soul, even in this life, something is moving through many different bodies. You know, we've all had so many different bodies already. I mean, we've had little baby bodies, little, you know, toddler bodies, young girl bodies, and now like, you know, or not girls, of course, Vishal, me and you are the only ones here like in male bodies. So I don't mean to bundle you in with the ladies, but you know, your eyebrows set you apart. It's clear you're not a lady. So yeah, we've all had different bodies. Of course, all of you are very young. I'm getting very old, feeling my age these days. So it's yeah, you know, we move through so many different bodies, and we've got a lot to look forward to. As the body gets old, you know, it's like so many things. So that's very scientific, you know. It's very scientific and natural, and also I think it's Isaac Newton that also has discussed this whole point that energy doesn't die, it just transforms, right? So you know, it's not that at the time of death, you know, even the physical body will transform into some other aspects of energy, and from ashes to ashes, dust to dust, right? So like that, and but the soul continues. So it's not really that hard to accept. It's just somehow science has focused for so many years on removing God and removing concepts of the soul from any formulas to help explain things, that, you know, it's kind of an uphill battle to try to reintroduce it. Whereas all of this, I mean, I was thinking the other day, just, you know, where someone was talking about astrology and all the different planets, you know, I mean, they were talking about planetary influences long before anybody invented a telescope. You know, the whole idea of astrology and astrological readings and understanding how the stars influence, this has been going on for like millenniums. Nobody invented any telescope to tell you, oh yeah, there is that place there. All of these terms and terminology that's been used, the modern scientists didn't use this. This all came from astrology and astronomy, from the Vedic knowledge that was there like millions of years ago, you know. But people just accept, no, it's all now, everything. But this knowledge and wisdom is been there for so long. So you're a great scientist. So now you have the opportunity to let the world know what is the truth. Don't let them live in illusion anymore. Wake up.
That's true, actually, because I think I wouldn't say I'm a great scientist, but the field I'm interested in would be more towards like sort of IVF and that kind of reproduction. But even then, the only thing that fascinates me is that thinking that, you know, people try to create babies in laboratories, but at the end of the day, the things that they use to create that is something natural, like something that's being created by a higher being. So every time I watch videos or listen to talks like that, it just makes me realize that there's something that's created those things to go on and create babies. So it's not like man-made or anything. So yeah.
Yeah, life comes from life, right? It's not like it's not like they go and put some, you know, calcium and a little bit of this, nitrogen and a little bit of that in a bag and shake it up and pour it out, and there's Varsha. Hey, wow, isn't that amazing? I just made a Varsha in the backyard. Or, you know, it's not like Cabbage Patch Kids, you know. When I was a kid, Cabbage Patch Kids were really popular. You know, it's like, you know, you think kids are born, you go out in the garden and look under a cabbage leaf, and there's a little kid just grew right out of the dirt, you know. But even if a kid did grow out of the dirt, it would still come from some elements that are already existing. Science didn't create the elements that are giving life, you know, and they haven't been able to do it. The whole cloning thing still means they have to use cells from something already living in order to create life. So like that.
Yeah, also another thing that I realized when I've been listening to talks by like embryologists or just meetings, I've been noticing that, you know, certain procedures that they use in the labs, they would just say, okay, you mix this and this together and you just let nature take its course. So it's that phrase that always stands out to me, that, you know, it's not, yeah, it's like man helping something, but at the end of the day, it's nature taking its course. So it's a higher force that's driving everything, you know.
Well, it's just man imitating God, basically. So what's already naturally occurring in nature, then man takes it, pulls it apart, looks at it and thinks, oh yeah, it's just this chemical and that. Oh, it's just chemicals. Well, it's not just chemicals, you know. But yeah, then I'll try to pour it together. But then I still have to wait for nature to do its thing. Oh, okay, nature. Well, what is nature? Oh, we don't know what is nature. You know, okay, you don't know what is nature, but I can tell you what is nature. Bhagavad-gita explained it 5,000 years ago. So like that. Anyway, I'm realizing I'm going very late and you want to do chanting. Vrishni is looking very unsettled, like, oh God.
Actually, I was actually thinking about something as well, with the point that you made about our consciousness and that we have to cultivate it during our life itself. Because I was thinking, we never know when we might die or how or what we're going to be thinking, and actually made me think. We actually had this experience a couple years ago. So it was me, my cousins, a couple of my cousins in Mauritius, and her husband as well, Chaitanya Vallabha. We were in a car, and so we spent a whole day out. And then, you know, we had a really good day, and we were just in the car. And we were driving in a very quiet road. It was a residential area. But at that point, you know, we didn't realize there was a van coming from the other way. And at that point, you know, we didn't see it. And in that moment, we thought we were going to die. And our thoughts wasn't, our consciousness, we didn't even, you know, we couldn't even think about something. Our consciousness was just, oh, we're going to hit the car and we're going to die. So we never know what we're going to be thinking. When we're going to, you know, we never know when we're going to die or what we're going to be thinking. So I thought that was a very important point, that we need to live in a way that our consciousness is also being cultivated throughout our lives. It's kind of a reality check that time.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah, if we're not preparing our consciousness, I mean, just think what is our consciousness if you stub your toe, you know, like you're walking along and you just jab your toe into something, you know, just a little stubbing of the toe, or if you stick a pin somehow, or you do some little thing, it hurts so much. All you think about is the pain in the body. What to speak of the time of death, you know, it's not necessarily going to be an easy thing. It's something we have to prepare ourselves for, so that at that time of death, our consciousness is really focused on transcending and getting out of the material world as opposed to staying in it. So very nice contribution. Thank you so much.